So I wanted to just introduce Patachara, who's the Buddhist nun whose statue is behind me. Patachara was one of the more important, maybe the most important Buddhist teacher for the early female women teacher in the time of the Buddha or soon thereafter. Very important teacher for the early nuns order. And this statue was specifically made and gifted to IMC and IRC, and it'll be here for a short while. It's going to be installed at our retreat center, an Insight Retreat Center. And those of you, maybe you could see it well enough, but when I finish here at 7:45 or so, I could try zooming in the camera a little bit more or something, and maybe you could see it closer. So so mindfulness practice is sometimes presented as being very simple as being aware of what's happening in the present moment. And noting just what's happening now as it's happening. Nothing more complicated than that. And it might not be more complicated what we do, but the impact of that simple moment-to-moment awareness practice can be multifaceted and profound. And in the Buddhist tradition, it's understood that it puts you on a path of progressive spiritual growth, spiritual development. And that there are a number of ways in which this development and growth is described. And it's a beautiful thing to discover and be surprised by how we change by this simple moment-to-moment awareness. It's also possible to have some understanding of what that change is and kind of recognize it earlier or even bring it along intentionally so that the moment-to-moment mindfulness practice and these other qualities begin to actually happen faster or fuller or richer for us in our life. And so today I want to mention that one of the important qualities of the path of practice as it opens up for people is the discovery or the unfolding, the opening of generosity. And so when we sit mindful of the present moment, I'll talk a little bit about breathing today, that it's possible to do so with a attitude of generosity. We say, give our attention, and attention is a beautiful gift to give anyone, including to ourselves. And to think of attention as a gift, that if we bring our attention to the breathing, we're not just bringing it, we're giving it. And the spirit of open-handedness, of generosity, of giving, can be there in our attitude towards being with the breathing. And it's also giving and receiving go together. And it's also the gift of being receptive, receiving a gift. And breathing, the present moment, can also be seen as a gift that we are the recipient of. And this idea that there's this kind of circle of being generous and and receiving a gift goes along with this practice. We become more generous as we become more generous in practice, living with a spirit of generosity. Simultaneously, there's an idea that, wow, what an amazing gift it is to be alive and to experience and to feel. So both to be generous in our attention to the breathing and to see breathing as a gift itself that we receive. So moment to moment, one gift after another, one moment of generosity after another. So to begin to sit upright, either literally or metaphorically, and to close your eyes. And with the eyes closed, perhaps can be a greater sensitivity to the body, greater sensitivity to the sensations of the body, to how the body experiences itself. And as an act of generosity towards oneself, it's often good at the beginning of a sitting to make the adjustments it takes with the body to feel a little bit more settled, as if you're caring for your body generously. And perhaps to take a few of these deeper breaths, the gifts of air, to receive it more fully. And as you exhale, the gift of relaxation, softening all over the body. A global relaxation of the face, the shoulders, the chest, the belly. A softening of the arms and hands, legs and feet. Each time you exhale, relaxing, letting go, and then letting your breathing return to normal. And then ever so slightly, not dramatically and not with high expectations of what it looks like, can you have an attitude of generosity as you bring attention to your breathing? Generosity that is similar to the generosity of being a good listener to a friend who needs a listener. The generosity of attending at the bedside of someone who's sick, where your job is mostly just to pay attention, to be available. That openness, attentive care, caring attention. And it's more than just coming back to the breathing, attending to the breathing. Perhaps there can be a feeling of generosity towards your body breathing, to yourself. Generosity accentuated, knowing that the simplicity of attention opens the door to greater and greater spiritual growth. You're giving yourself a wonderful gift that allows the inner life to slowly, ever so slowly, maybe not today, to mature and to grow and to open. And in that growth, more and more you'll feel that life is a gift. The gift of the moment, breathing, one breath at a time. you've noticed you've drifted off in thought, to begin again with awareness, to let it be more an opening than a contracting, more a opening of generosity, like opening the hand to give something with an open hand, and less a contracting or a regret or idea that something is wrong. There's something right, very right. Noticing if you're thinking, and then that openness, generously, beginning again with attention to breathing. As we come to the end of this sitting, to whatever degree there is generosity in our ability to be mindful, to attend to attention, to be aware of the world around us. May this generosity extend from us out into the people we'll meet today. May it be that we appreciate that being generous to others is a support, direct connection to our ability to be mindful and aware in the present. There's a generosity of being present to others. And to begin with that, to begin with generosity of giving your time, to really listen, see, attend, to be with anyone you encounter, whether it's through an email or through a phone call or some other means, or even if it's just in your thoughts. So that you can attend to those you think about with generosity. May it be that this practice that we do brings greater generosity into this world that we live in. And may that generosity of ours support the welfare and happiness, ease and health and freedom of all beings everywhere. May all beings everywhere be liberated. So in introducing generosity as part of the meditation today, I'm beginning the series of talks on these mornings on the 10 paramis. The Pali word is parami, in Sanskrit it's paramitas. And these are really rich and beautiful and important qualities of heart that develop as we practice. And we've been using them for the last 15 years or so as the reference point for offering spiritual care in a training we have here on a Buddhist chaplaincy training. So we train people to be hospitals and hospice and prison chaplains, and we use this as part of the framework for looking at the compassion and liberation that goes into Buddhist spiritual care. In fact, the 10 qualities that are the paramis, often called in English the perfections, or that which is ultimate, is is that what makes them paramis is that they're intimately connected to the human capacity for compassion and the human capacity for liberation, liberating the heart. And so generosity is the first one. And many people in the world are generous. It's a wonderful thing to be. And when generosity comes out of or supports or is part of the path of greater compassion and greater liberation, then it is a parami. So there's ordinary generosity, and there's generosity that is infused or informed by compassion and liberation. And that's what the 10 paramis are. And so the 10 are generosity, ethical behavior, renunciation, wisdom, energy or engagement, and patience, and truthfulness, resolve, loving kindness, and equanimity. So over the next 2 weeks, each morning, I'll take one of those 10. Now, what's nice about this also, is that these 10 are a different description of the path of practice. That they kind of, it's a way of understanding how practice can involve, doesn't have to evolve. It evolves sequentially, kind of one gets stronger, then the next gets stronger, the next gets stronger. So by the time we get to the last one, equanimity, there's no possibility of thinking about equanimity being some kind of cold indifference, because it's really built on this foundation of all the other 9 paramis, which are these strengths that we develop. And then you feel that equanimity is a strength that's built on wisdom and determination and truthfulness and loving kindness and the others. And so it begins with generosity. And in many ways, the Buddha taught the path of practice can be seen to begin with generosity. Or generosity is a wonderful foundational practice for Buddhism. And one of the reasons why generosity is so rich and valuable is that generosity, if that's the beginning of the path to practice, it puts our practice in the context of our interpersonal lives, our lives with other people and even other living beings. Rather than if we start with meditation, it's very easy to get the message that the foundation, the beginning, is ourselves, which is nothing wrong to begin there, but it can lead to being a little bit sometimes askew with emphasizing excessive individualism or certain kind of conceit about myself and my own experience. But to begin with generosity, it clearly begins with the formation or the formation or the foundation of healthy interpersonal relationships. And to have our practice built on that, on our relationship with the world, is, I think, a wonderful lesson and a wonderful reference point for doing the more individualistic work of meditation itself. The other thing that's nice about generosity, really emphasized at the beginning, as I said, it's really connected to compassion and liberation. And especially with compassion, there's not a few people who tend to relate to compassion with a sense of obligation. It's kind of a duty to be compassionate, and that we're supposed to be, and we have to be. And some people really are really central to their understanding of how to be a human being, and a good human being is a sense of obligation, living up to the obligation, what we're supposed to do. And it can be almost frightening, disturbing, upsetting to remove that sense of obligation from the orientation in which they live their lives. So maybe this has a little bit to do with how we understand the word obligation or duty, responsibility. But when we start with generosity, generosity is always voluntary. You can't be generous if it's not a voluntary act. You can give with attachment, you can give reluctantly, But to be generous, it's a voluntary act of openness, of abundance, of letting go, of granting, and it can't be obligatory. And so it comes out of some wellspring inside of health, of goodness, of openness, of connectedness that sometimes is discovered as we sit and meditate and stay in the present moment and let go of all the attachments, all the crusts of resistance and defensiveness and greed and fear that we have. And it just begins to shed and relax. And this natural feeling of wanting to care for someone, be generous to someone, in this ordinary, simple way, begins to become stronger and stronger. To emphasize generosity in the beginning is to really point back to that possibility and that place of goodness that we have. And it's very important to appreciate that it's not an obligation. So we have to feel our way, or make space for, or take the time for, or do the it's almost like, if you like obligation, we have an obligation to find how to be generous without obligation. And so then spiritual care is caring for others in all kinds of different ways, with compassion, comes from this feeling of, I don't know if abundance is the right word, from this freedom. It's our freedom that's expressed in generosity, and not our contractedness and our heaviness and weight of responsibility. And so part of the practice then of generosity is in fact to stretch ourselves, maybe as a practice to be generous, but not to stretch ourselves with duty, but stretch ourselves with, can we find this freedom? Can we find the liberation of heart that allows generosity to flow as a kind of a natural quality, kind of something we're inspired to do, that flows almost like out of ease and out of goodness and out of, it's a simple thing, it's an obvious thing. Of course I want to be generous. And so to explore that edge and look at the places where we don't want to be generous, where we hold back, we're afraid to be generous, and or we're just simply too preoccupied with our own concerns to be generous, and see what does it mean to start living with greater generosity, and what is it like to open more and more. And one of the ways that it's like, surprisingly, this wonderful kind of way in which we sometimes feels like we receive more than we give. The more we're generous, the more life can be experienced as a gift. The more we're actually available for the gifts that life has to give. It's symbolic for me with the idea that if we hold something in our hand, and to hold it tight in a fist, that's one way of living. But in order to give what we have in our hand to someone else, we have to open our hand up so they can have it. But once our hand is open, the hand is available for other things to happen. It's available for the gifts of life. If we stay fisted, we don't really have a sense of we're not really available for what life has to give. And life is always supporting us and here in a way. And so generosity as the foundation of this journey of the Paramis. And I hope that as we go through these 10-part series, that you might kind of participate by spending each day focusing a little bit on these qualities. So for today, or the next 24 hours wherever you are, to make generosity kind of a theme. You might want to write it down, carry it with you, or just somewhere so you're reminded by it, and just kind of explore and stretch and talk to your friends about generosity, and maybe do some simple reading about it in books or on the web. Just kind of little ideas, and kind of live with it and feel your way into it, and review and reflect on your own relationship to generosity. And each day to do that with these different qualities and maybe you'll start getting a sense of the momentum of how they build one on top of the other, and hopefully this building of something that is non-obligatory, that arises from some feeling of generosity, of liberation, of freedom, of being non-attached, non-clinging, and our compassionate, caring connectivity to the world around us. That our gift that we receive from our world is in fact the love and the care that we can also give to the world. It's all mixed together, generosity and receiving in a rich way. So I look forward to these days on the Paramis, and fill you in more about what they're about as we go along here. So thank you very much for today. And then for those of you who would like to stay a little bit longer, I can try to maybe zoom in on the face of Patachara. I see it in my kind of screen here. It seems like it's a pretty good, clear picture. But maybe it'd be nice for me to try, and I can maybe show you a little bit, tell you a little bit more about the statue. Okay, so let's see what we have here, what I can do. Oh, here we go. That's where I have to look. So I can, first I'll center her. Okay, there we go. And then I will there we go. So there's a whole story around Patachara and how we received this gift that probably is on YouTube now, because it was yesterday, and Andrea Fella, who's one of the senior teachers here and co-teacher here at IMC, she told a story of Patachara, and it's Patachara. As many of their early Buddhist nuns, had been a mother and had lost her children, and they died as children, a tragic death. Her husband died, her family died, and when Andrea was telling the story of Patachara having lost her both children, her husband, her parents, and brother. Yesterday, I remembered that I was talking about Sunday morning about the Buddhist monk in Cambodia named Mahagosananda, who in the Pol Pot times, same thing happened to him. He lost his whole family then to genocide. And so this happens in the ancient world. I think there was a lot of child death at childbirth and young in life. And so this huge grief is a part of many of these early Buddhist nuns' lives. And in their grief, they came to the Buddha and received teachings in a different way. And Patachara was one of these, and who worked through her grief. And apparently her practice was not easy. And it was... but there's a beautiful story in the poem, her Enlightenment poem, that where she talks about washing her feet, and as the foot washing water is kind of finished with it, maybe she pours it away, she sees it flowing down a little slope where she's sitting. And she gets concentrated watching the flow of water. And in that concentrated state, she goes back into her dwelling, maybe her little hut, with a candle. And the candle is a flame, it's probably an oil lamp with a little wick coming out of it that's burning there. And she sits down on the bed, and she takes a pin to remove the wick so that the flame dies out. And as the flame fades away, her mind is liberated. And it's kind of, you can imagine her getting concentrated and really absorbed in something. And there's sometimes when we really get absorbed in something and it suddenly disappears, sometimes the mind gives away in a certain way that sets it free. And it's also symbolic because the quenching, the putting out of a flame, the fever, the flame of greed, hate, and delusion, is symbolic of liberation in Buddhism, or represents it. So Patachara then became an early teacher. She ordained other nuns, and many of the early nuns expressed their gratitude, appreciation, and for her teachings and her support. And so this statue was made in Bali, and because the senior students here at IMC who are looking for a statue as a gift of a woman had a hard time finding a living Buddhist woman, or not a living, but a human Buddhist woman to have a statue of. It's easy to find statues of Kuan Yin and Tara and different kinds of more like bodhisattva or deities, kind of from Mahayana Buddhism. But Theravadan Buddhism, the Buddhism that we do here, is very human-centered. So we wanted to have an ordinary human being, and ideally one of the early nuns in the time of the Buddha. And so in the end, they decided to make the Buddha, have it commissioned, and we were given a connection to a wonderful sculpture studio in Bali, and we worked with the people there, kind of a little bit with specifications and what we wanted to have, and this is what we ended up with Patachara. And let me see if I can. Oops. Let's see. Now you get to see everything, what the studio looks like. I meant to not to take it so far. So there you go. So thank you very much, and I will see you tomorrow.